So I'm Kathleen Gilrain. I don't know everybody who's on my screen right now, but many of you I have met. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'd like to welcome you all to SMAC Mellon's first ever 5 Macs. We're really excited about this new program that we developed to keep conversations going in our diverse arts communities. These are evenings of sharing artwork and networking with an eye to widening our community's connections during this period of social distancing. They're open to everyone. These evenings are especially for artists who want to see and show new work. We have all been feeling pretty isolated, and many have not been able to make art right now. I've been talking with a lot of artists who aren't able to make art. And that's sad. In this time of staying home, we thought it would be a good idea to create an opportunity for artists to meet new artists and form new relationships that may continue beyond tonight and next week. We hope this will result in a widening of your community and ours. The 5 Macs events consist of a 2-part program to take place on alternating weeks. Tonight, 5 presenting artists will each show their work for 5 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of audience questions with each artist. After this program, artists who are here attending tonight can sign up for a chance to participate in a closed group meeting to take place next Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m. There will not be an audience in these closed groups. Each group will include 5 artists from this audience tonight, 1 of the artists presenting tonight, and 1 SMAC Mellon staff or board member. If you are interested in participating in part 2 of this program, the link to our submittable application is in the chat. Click on the chat at the bottom of your screen. If you don't know how to see the chat, you just put your cursor down to the bottom of the screen and chat should show up, and it should open up on the right side of your screen, and the link will be there. If you don't see it there or you can't copy it, don't worry about it. It'll be on our website on the 5 Macs page. When you get to the website, you will go to the submittable application link and upload 10 images of your work. You can also submit video links, but we will not be showing video during the session, but we'll give the links to the artists in your group and they can watch your video ahead of time. We're doing that because video doesn't really play well over Zoom. There's like a delay and it just doesn't look good. So 10 still images. Follow the instructions for the size and how to name your images. And then we're going to select artists in the order that they submit their application. So I encourage you all to apply as soon as you can get it together. We will, however, be careful to stay within our mission, which is to always show at least 60% women artists. So, you know, you may not get in, even if you get your application in really early, because we're not going to veer off from our mission. And we're also going to make sure that we have a diverse representation of cultures and backgrounds. Okay, so I know that these are really difficult times, harder for some than others. If you are able to and would like to make a contribution to SMAC Mellon to support our programs, the link to our donate page is in the chat. No contribution is too small, and we would put your donation to really good use. Thanks to those of you who have already donated. We really appreciate it. Please note, this session will be recorded and may be posted online. By participating in this session, you consent to this recording. So let's get started. I would like to thank the artists who will be sharing their work with us tonight: SHIN, HAYNES, KARINA Aguilera SKVIRSKY, RUDY Shepherd, and Mary Temple. And thanks to the SMAC Mellon team who created this new program. Staff members Gabriel de Guzman, Audrey Irving, Javier Maria, Becky Sellinger, and 3 of our board members worked on this: Ilana Herzog, Rob Hickman, and Ward Shelley. And now I would like to introduce Gabriel de Guzman, SMAC Mellon Curator and Director of Exhibitions. Gabriel joined SMAC Mellon in 2017. As Curator and Director of Exhibitions, he is responsible for organizing and producing all of the exhibitions in the gallery. His recent curatorial projects include the group exhibition Empathy, from fall 2018 and Uproot from fall 2017. Previously, Gabriel was curator of visual arts at Wave Hill. He has also presented exhibitions as a guest curator at many venues in and around New York, including Dorsky Gallery curatorial programs, Bronx Art Space, Rush Arts Gallery, Dykeman Farmhouse Museum, and FOCO at Andrew Friedman Home, and the Bronx Museum's 2013 AIM Biennial. Gabriel earned an MA in Art History from Hunter College and a BA in Art History from the University of Virginia. So Gabriel will take it from here.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. And I also want to thank you for your leadership of SMAC Mellon and for steering the ship in rough waters during this difficult time. So we've managed to keep on keeping on because of your great work too. So thanks. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first 5 Max program. I'm Gabriel and I'll be your guide essentially this evening. So before we get started, let me just tell you how the program's gonna run. I'll be introducing each artist, and one by one they will each give a presentation of 5 minutes max, followed by 5 minutes of questions and comments from the audience, and then we'll move on to the next artist until all 5 have presented. During the presentations, I'll be sharing my screen, and I'll be showing the images of the artist's work. I'll keep track of time and we'll give the artist a 1-minute warning to wrap up their talk. If everyone else could please keep yourself on mute during the presentations, that would be appreciated. And then during the audience Q&A after each talk, then I encourage you to participate by asking a question or making a comment about the artist's work. To do that, you should write, "I have a question" in the chat. And then I'll call on you to ask your question to the artist, or if you'd rather not speak, you can just write your question in the chat and I will read it out loud for the artist to answer. And I'll try and go in the order that the questions are received. While I have my screen shared, your chat window might not be visible. So to open the chat window, move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen and then click on chat. And then please refrain from side conversations in the chat, so it'll be easier for me to find all the questions. And then after the 5 minutes of discussion, we'll move on to the next presenting artist. So it's gonna be easy breezy. So I'd like to welcome tonight's artists. We're really grateful to have you all here participating in this event. We're gonna start with Jean SHIN, followed by Clarity HAYNES, then KARINA Aguilera SKVIRSKY, then Rudy Shepard, and then Mary Temple. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see that? Okay, great. So we're going to start with Jean SHIN. Jean SHIN is recognized for her monumental installations that transform everyday objects into elegant expressions of identity and community engagement. Her work has been widely exhibited in over 150 major museums and cultural institutions, including the Museum of Modern Art in New York, Philadelphia Museum of Art, Smithsonian American Art Museum, the Museum of Fine Art Houston, Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and Storm King Art Center. In recognition of her excellence, she's received numerous awards, including 2 New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowships, the Pollock Krasner Grant, among others. And Jean was also a studio artist at SMAC Mellon back in 2002. Born in Seoul, Korea, and raised in the US, Jean lives and works in Brooklyn, New York. Are you ready, Jean?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna start the timer.
I
Ladies.
want to thank you, Gabrielle, for this invitation, and also Kathleen, and so many people who've joined us tonight, because there's so many overlapping threads here of people that we have shared, and it's so lovely to connect virtually while we can't do that in your beautiful space. So thank you again.
Thanks, Jean. Okay, so.
Yeah, so tonight we'll go to the first image. What I was thinking was, I was thinking back to some of my projects, and in particular, I was sort of curating them, selecting them based on works that resonated with me right now during the COVID time. So this is Chant City. It is a city made out of losing lotto tickets that are balanced like a house of cards. And it's kind of an optimistic city built out of labor, but really it's a city that could fall any moment. And I think as we're thinking about rebuilding our communities, there are shortcuts to thinking that we can just instantly win, profit, and get back. And I feel like there is such the reality of these vulnerable communities, and certainly our built environment, that we have to take the slow route, that actually creating strong foundations is the way to go. And I think that Chant City made me very aware of the risks that we take, and the kind of overheaded optimism that comes along with these kind of ideas of success and winning. So next image was also this project that I did at the Museum of Modern Art. And in particular, as we know, our arts community is extremely vulnerable. Our institutions are making cuts. And this is a project that I did collecting MoMA's employee staff clothing. And at a time when they were making their new museum in Midtown and having relocated to Queens, it was a time again where staff were feeling very vulnerable, layoffs were heavy. And so there was a lot of disparities and disbursement of staff. And I feel like we're going through this time again, where we're not feeling whole, we're feeling very fragmented. And so this is a chance for us to re-examine our hierarchies and the structures that don't work, and who's sort of left behind. Next image, I have chemical balance. And of course, we're all just trying to think, when is the vaccine coming? It's both a blessing that we have these incredible drugs, but also falsehoods, again, with people telling us this works and it doesn't. And then ultimately, who has access to these drugs and affordable healthcare and universal healthcare, all of those concerns that we have about, even if there is a path to recovery and health, who's getting them and who has access to, and who's paying for them, what will it cost us ultimately? And the next image is everyday monuments that I did with the Smithsonian, and thinking about who are our leaders, who are the hopeful people that we look toward. And I feel like I am not looking toward history to some big monument of a man, a hero, but really looking at our everyday humanity and the people who are doing the work. So in the next image, you see that these are trophies that have been reconfigured to really give tribute to the people at work who are doing our essential work, the mechanics, the cooks, the maids, the house cleaner. And I felt like, you know, we're now terming them as essential work. They're the people in the front line trying to make sure that our basic needs are met. And yet when this pandemic is over, I don't think we're going to be thinking of them and really repaying our debt to them while we feel safe. And so this idea of the everyday hero is still driving my thoughts today. Other projects, we go to the next image. Well, I mean, this is a project where I've made a hybrid landscape, an artificial landscape, soda bottles, creating a corn stalk. And what seems sort of natural is not so natural at all. And so right now I'm thinking about what does real food look like, and versus what are these processed foods. So
1 minute, Jean.
Oh, corn production, of course, is leading toward processed food, and while we're all thinking about things that bring us comfort. Next image is a year ago, I opened with this beautiful project at Stern King, and it was a whole alley of trees that had been dying and dismantled, and I salvaged the wood to create this monumental sculpture, a place of gathering. And it was a place to mourn nature's loss, and I feel like we are all going to want to gather, but that we have a lot of mourning and grieving to do the greater loss that we're experiencing during this crisis. And lastly, as a project that is on pause permanently for a while, is an exhibition that's in San Francisco at the Asian Art Museum. And I wanted to evaluate our relationship to technology and nature. Of course, it got revamped because all of what we're doing is dealing with our connectivity through Zoom and technology ever present. And so this is all made out of e-waste or mobile phones, or intimate ways in which we've connected, and wanting to create a pause and to reevaluate these relationships that we have, which has really gone out the door, but I hope that we can kind of reconnect again, because that is in essence what we're trying to do. That's my time. Thank you so much for my quick review.
Thanks, Jean. Thank you so much. Yay. Who has questions for Jean? Please ask questions about process or content or anything you want to ask about this amazing work.
And are we asking them to write in the chat? I have a question.
Yeah, okay, so Robin Glassman has a question. Oh, here, I can unmute you. Oh. Sorry, you're muted, Robin. And I can't seem to unmute you. Oh.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay, great.
We
Thanks.
can hear you.
Okay. What's your question?
The first couple of images, the house of cards, and then I forget which one. Were those recent?
No, I sort of did a historic review of some of the works, in particular because of the thoughts I had around coronavirus and these themes of underlying invisible structures that are failed us, and a time to connect, or things that I've been thinking about throughout my practice. So I brought them together because there was something about rebuilding a city. You know, what does it mean to be overly optimistic, to go too fast in our structures, to take risks that we don't need to take because they will eventually fail. So those are things that I wanted to bring into a conversation today.
You did a great job. Thank you.
And Hannah Owens has a question.
Hi, Jean. I love your work. I had a question about your process as connected to the ultimate product. So it seems like the meaning in the ultimate result of your art often seems very poignant, very cerebral. There's a definite meaning to it, a definite message. Does your process itself and the emotion of the process itself ever inform or, you know, reflect in the message, rather than it being more of a pointed cerebral message? Or is most of your work usually something very to the point, I guess?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, I do work in many layers, and one of it is a conceptual framework, another is the accumulation of materials with so-called my participants or community. So that's really important. And of course, after I get the conceptual framework, all of it is an emotional thing. When you're collecting material from someone, you are emotionally connected in an email and a conversation. And of course, they're giving you objects that they cherished and saved and trust you. So there's a real social contract as to what this material exchange is really about. So it's very emotional in that way. It's not something you can really talk about. I think it's present in the work if you see the real work. That doesn't translate so well in Zoom. But when you're in front of a trophy, and this is a childhood trophy, or when you're in front of a shirt, those kind of intangible, physical, tactile qualities in the work, I think are both emotional to me, but emotional to anyone who views these objects. I have to say, at the last show I had at the Philadelphia, when I had many installations and they were coming out of the boxes, I was crying because these were like, so the smells of them, they were just like children being unearthed. I mean, I don't get to live with my sculptures very often because they're so massive, but there's such an emotional, psychological connection to these objects in people's lives. And I so respect that and want to work with that.
Thank you.
Thanks. And the next question is in the chat. It says, Jean, are you inspired by landscape in the final work? I think that means this one.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really looking at landscape, but also constructed landscape. So this was at the Asian Art Museum, so I was thinking about Zen gardens and scholar rocks. So both nature itself, but also our construct, idealize nature in different cultures, whether it's Thoreau wanting to retreat. And so again, we have that same impulse, like while we're going through COVID, some of us want to retreat to nature as if it's our sanctuary. But, you know, if we're not taking care of nature and all our upgrades and technology, my laptop goes thrown into the, you know, the environment, how are we retreating? We're going to retreat to our e-waste. You know, there's no retreating to technology if we keep upgrading. So yes, it's inspired by nature, but we're also part of that nature. And what we're putting into nature is everything, you know, all our waste, all our e-waste, our plastics. So I am inspired by nature, but that term I think is very, very broad. And then we have to dig and unpack that in our waste stream toward our consumer behavior. So a lot of this is a critique about our consumer behavior, which is happening right now because we can't buy things. We're just cooking at home and, you know, reduced down to our essence.
Thanks. Sorry, that was time. So it looks like we're only able to answer maybe 3 or 4 questions or address 3 or 4 questions in this time period, but
well, the next speaker may not blab on with their answers. They might be more poignant. So trial 1.
Yeah. And hopefully there are other questions in the chat, and hopefully some of those artists will get to either, you know, ask you some other way or some other time, or if they join the part 2 closed group that you'll be facilitating, then obviously they can have a conversation with you then.
Sure.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will, hold on, move on to the next artist. Okay. So next we have Clarity Haynes. Clarity is a New York-based painter and writer engaging with feminist art and spirituality, queer and trans culture, and trauma and healing. Her recent exhibition, Altered Bodies, at Denny Dimon Gallery in Tribeca, was presented by Benjamin Tischer's New Directions. She has received awards from the Pollock Krasner Foundation, New York Foundation for the Arts, the Bronx Arts Council, and New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. She's participated in residencies at the MacDowell Colony and at Yaddo. And her work has been reviewed in the New York Times, Art Forum, Hyperallergic, and the New Yorker. Are you ready, Clarity?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna set the timer.
Okay.
Ready, set, go.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. So I have been painting portraits of people's torsos for more than 20 years. The image you see here is a portrait of Genesis Breyer Peorage, who is a legendary body-centric artist who unfortunately recently passed away, or as she would say, dropped her body. All of my portraits are done from life, and many are monumental in scale and often take several years to complete. I wrote about my experience having Genesis model for me in the Brooklyn Rail in the In Memoriam section soon after she passed away. Next slide, please. People often ask why no head, and I feel that faces are like ID cards, but bodies house intimate secrets. And to me, they are like landscapes. Every scar, every tattoo, every necklace is a story. And altars, to me, are like personal treasure troves, sacred space in which I can honor the divine feminine, my friends, my queer family, and my artistic heroes. And painting pictures of altars, which I've started doing in the past year, is a way of making them permanent and portable. We can go to the next slide. This is a detail of the previous slide, which is Rainbow Altar Spring into Summer. It's 58 inches tall. And one of the images that you see here is a small painting of a Judy Chicago dinner plate. We could go to the next slide. This is Grace, and this is kind of a gateway portrait. I think of the body as a kind of altar, and the creative choices we make around our bodies often have to do with healing, spirituality, and self-determination. And in Grace's case, they decided to make their own necklace for their portrait, inspired by Genesis's charm necklace. So all of these objects are like power objects to Grace, and they hold very special personal and family meaning. Next slide. This is Lion Altar, Summer into Fall. So I'm interested in the equivalency between the painting surface and the subjects depicted. Johanna Fateman wrote about my work in the New Yorker, and she called it queer trompe-l'oeil, which I loved. We could look at the next slide. I'm also deeply inspired by the feminist art tradition of the 1970s, which had a strong focus on the feminist altar. And everything that you see in my altars that I set up and paint are all special objects given to me by friends and other artists. So color is an obsession of mine recently, and I'm really interested in exploring delight. My work has always been about healing and trauma and confronting shame, but only recently has it been so focused on joy. And I see this as a natural outgrowth of the healing process. This is a portrait. It's 18 by 18. It's a smaller portrait. And it is Sarah Morningstar, and just an example of my interests. Sarah had open heart surgery and then got a tattoo afterwards, specifically to relate to and interact with her open heart surgery scar, which I really loved. And
1 minute.
Okay, thanks. I have all my models write something in a series of open journals where I keep photographs of the process and what they had to write. And she referred to her body as a cozy shack that she could decorate creatively and feel comfortable in. And I'm always interested in how people express themselves and how they can communicate something about their experience of embodiment. And it's always interesting to know why they choose to model for me. And I think even my torso portraits have gotten more colorful in the past year. So it's sort of a new frontier for me to really be thinking about color.
Thank you. And time is 3 seconds to spare.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. That was the last slide. Okay, yeah. So, okay. It looks like Rebecca Presto has a question.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Clarity. It's great to see you. Your altar pieces are new to me, and I'm really digging them. And so I just have this like rush of questions, which are, do you conceive of them before you put them together? How long are they there? Do they remain for the time that you create the work? Do you then disassemble?
I do, because of my lack of space. I have to disassemble them to make way for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But actually my first altar that I ever painted was, weirdly, it was about 20 years ago, and it was my own altar. And I only recently remembered that and how much I love doing it. And that's why I decided to do it again. But now I actually make the altars for the painting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next person is Arancha Rodriguez.
Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you, KARINA. I love your work, and I feel terrible that I missed your last show. I couldn't make it, so I'm super happy to be in this talk. So before I make my question really fast, I do not believe in cultural appropriation when it's about honoring something, but have you ever gotten in trouble because of cultural appropriation in any way?
Not yet, but it's something that I think about a lot. I think I've done a lot of, I think I've come to the conclusion that it matters. I mean, it's all about power dynamics, right? So it matters kind of what the intention is and what is done with it. And if, for example, if someone gives me an object and that object is not from my cultural background, I may still include it in the altar, especially if that is an expression of that person's background and they're a good friend. So that's kind of how I make the decisions about that. But I'm very aware that it's a problem. And even with like contemporary feminist spirituality, that can often be an issue, like with pagan spirituality and when people are not aware. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, perfect. I was just curious. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And the next question is by Emmy Brenner, and it's written in the chat. Is there a way or reason you pick the subjects you paint? Also, how big and how long approximately do they take?
I've done over 500 portraits over the years of different people, and some of them have just been pastel portraits that take only about a couple of hours. And the large paintings, though, are a real decision, and they can take several years. And it's a real commitment to work with that person over that period of time. And those torsos usually are about 5 feet tall. So the body in relation to the viewer is much larger. So people have often said, oh, it's like I'm a baby because my size to this body is like a baby or something to a mother.
Great. Marion Wilson has a question.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, I love your
Hi,
work. Hi, Gabrielle. Thank you for this wonderful program. Thank you, Jean, also. KARINA, I love your work. I had a question. Can you talk a little bit about the spiritual traditions and healing practices that you're involved in?
Yeah. When I was in my 20s was when I first did my first self-portrait, and I'll try to be really quick. I had a lot of trauma to work through, and a lot of it had to do, it was in my body, and I needed to really, I was making a lot of life changes, and it was very emotional, and I found a lot of healing in the divine feminine, and I made a whole group of friends, and so it's, I would say it's like contemporary neo-pagan goddess pagan spirituality. And I found that the embracing of the body as sacred was a big part of my particular healing process. And it was also often within the context of feminist and queer culture and creating a safe space in which that happened with a bunch of other people, not really alone, but in a context of community.
Great, thanks. We have 15 seconds, so I don't know if you can answer this one quickly, but someone asked how you choose your models.
It can be, sometimes they come to me, and they're recommended to me. Sometimes I have been known to ask someone that I've just come across that I don't know. But it's a lot easier now that we have the internet. It was not that easy in the 90s.
Right. Great. Well, thank you so much, Clarity.
Thank you.
That was really, really great. So now I'm going to introduce KARINA Aguilera SKVIRSKY. Okay. KARINA is a multidisciplinary artist who works with photographs, video, and performance. She's exhibited widely in the US and internationally, including a solo show at Mellon in fall 2017. She participated in the Cuenca Biennial, curated by Dan Cameron in 2016, and the Sao Paulo Biennale in 2010. She's participated in numerous residencies and received many grants, including from Creative Capital, Anonymous Was a Woman, NIFA, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, and the Jerome Foundation. Her work is included in the public collections of Urbes Mutantes, Valsuela, Whitney Museum of American Art, SF MoMA, and the Art Institute of Chicago. KARINA is an associate professor in the Department of Art at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania. She lives and works in New York and Ecuador. KARINA, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, the timer is starting now.
Hi, everybody. So nice that you could join us, and I'm really excited about this program. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is a video still from The Perilous Journey of Maria Rosa Palacios, which I finished in 2016, and it premiered in Ecuador at the Cuenca Biennial. This video is a 30-minute hybrid performance-based video that also veers into the documentary. And in it, I reenact my Afro-Ecuadorian great-grandmother's journey in 1906 from the highlands of Chota in Ecuador to the bustling coast of Guayaquil to work as a domestic. She was probably 14 years old, and because the railroad had not been completed, she would have had to travel the way people did many centuries earlier, by foot, by donkey, and by boat. Next slide. So that video is the one that was exhibited at Mellon in 2017, and that was the US premiere, so I'm really grateful for that. And while I often work with video and photography, and there's a way that those projects intersect. So while my great-grandmother was in the process of migrating from Chota to Guayaquil, she would have run into laborers who were building the railroad, which was finished 2 years after her journey. That's kind of how I figured out that she traveled before the railroad had been completed. So what you're looking at is an example from a series of works called The Railroad Workers, in which I integrate collage archival photographs of railroad workers that helped build the Ecuadorian railroad behind contemporary landscapes around where the railroad is today. So what you're seeing, it's not literal, it's just a kind of organic process that happened in the studio. And the lines that you see are where the photograph is actually folded. So those folds create a kind of movement when you're looking at it. Next slide. So the titles of these refer to the locations where the railroad is. And I should say something about the laborers. My great-grandmother was a migrant, and the laborers were also migrants. So that, of course, she would have run into them in the process of her journey. So they were from Jamaica, and they were also indigenous workers that came from different parts of Ecuador to help build this project, which really took like 60 years and an incredible amount of human labor, and many lives were lost. Next slide. So part of what happens with the folding and the collaging of this work is that I'm really interested in how memory kind of shifts and and exploring the subjectivity of history. So I'm literally kind of excavating these landscapes to find the history beneath them. That's kind of how I think about them. Next slide. This is the mountain of Chimborazo, which is the tallest mountain in Ecuador, second tallest in South America. It's a night landscape. And of course, I did all this research and read about how tunnels had to be blasted through to create the railroad tracks.
1 minute.
Next slide. This is in Chunchi. Next slide. I wanted to show you a little bit of what I've been working on recently, which is how to build a wall in other ruins, and includes a video installation and series of photographic collages that focus on Ingapirca, an archaeological and tourist site in Ecuador. It's Ecuador's Machu Picchu at a much smaller scale. I've been photographing the site, which is made up of a circular wall built by Incas that pays homage to the sun. And there's a lot of mystery about how the Incas hauled giant rocks, cut them precisely, and then built walls without mortar. So what you're seeing is an invented narrative, similar to the narratives that you can find on the web about how aliens built these walls. So this is inserting a narrative about women building Ingapirca. So it's called Carrying the Rock. And then I'm going to show you a few more images. That's my timer.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And we can end with you can go through these quickly. And I'm just folding and cutting those rocks and putting them on top of my body. And they reference performances that, of course, never happened. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karina. And these are, just to clarify, these are photographs of the rocks that you collaged onto photographs of your body.
Yes, they're Inca cut rocks that were not used to build anything.
I see, yeah. Great, well, thank you so much, Karina. And I also wanted to mention that we are on the 5Max page on our website. We shared a link to your video on that webpage. So if you wanna watch Karina's video, you can click on the link there. Who has a question for Karina? It looks like we have a lot of comments. The folding is amazing, reminding me of Don Clements. And okay, it looks like Michaela Vivero has a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Karina, I'm from Ecuador too. Super exciting to see you and hear you talk. I'm interested to know what the scale of those rocks is, if they are really that big, or if you also play with the audience in regard to the scale of the rocks.
That's a great question. Yes, scale is a big thing that I play with in all my work. So the rock itself is much smaller. Some are smaller, some are bigger. It kind of depends on the piece, but I try to make it work for the work itself rather than for some other kind of, realism.
Thank you. And Robin Glassman is asking, could you explain more about the folding?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the earlier work, the folding is like it's like trying to embed myself or like enter the photograph. And I'm really interested in the materiality of the photograph. I've been doing photography for a really long time. And so I have like a dialogue with photography. And so the folding kind of plays with this idea of time. And I'm thinking a lot about collapsing time frames. People have said that the folding reminds them of a map that they might put in their pocket. And since so much of my work has to do with place, that kind of makes sense to me. I like that concept. And then in the other work, and the folding is, again, like trying to enter this pre-Columbian history, and thinking about how these false narratives about Incans and who built their amazing structures, thinking about the rock, its materiality, the photographic reality around rocks, and also its connection to modernism and geometry.
Thanks, Karina. What was I going to say? Does anyone else have a specific question for Karina? Oh, okay. Okay. So Kate Teal commented that she loves the collage rock performance. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about the performative aspect maybe of this series of work.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So in some sense, they're fake, they're false performances, and there's this line that I blur a lot in my work in terms of the real and blurring the line between, you know, photographs have this aura of truth. So I'm really interested in kind of exploring that. So when you see these in real life, they're folded and they have like a sculptural quality. They're a little bit more flattened out on the screen, but they still kind of, people believe them because they're photographs. And so they're, you know, the photographs are taken in two different spaces, right? And then put together. And so there's a performative action in that, or quality. And also somebody had mentioned to me that there's also the performance of making them, which I don't think of it in that way, but I really, again, like that allusion to working in the studio and performing, or trying to put myself in a very minor way in my ancestors, you know, shoes of like cutting the rock and kind of going through that meditative. In my case, it's meditative. In their case, it's very communal.
Right. Thank you. So that is time, but I did want to just quickly mention that Robert Hickman posted the link to your video in the chat. So if anyone wants to copy that link, they can watch your video later. Thank you, Karina. Thanks. So next we're gonna go to Rudy Shepard. Rudy Shepard explores the nature of evil through the mediums of painting, drawing, sculpture, and performance. This exploration involves investigations into the lives of both criminals and victims of crime. He has had solo exhibitions at Mixed Greens Gallery in New York, Regina Miller Gallery at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, 1708 Gallery in Richmond, Virginia, and he also had a major exhibition at SMAC Mellon in 2018. Rudy has also been in numerous group exhibitions nationally and internationally. He's participated in artist residencies at PS1 Contemporary Art Center, Jacob Lawrence Institute for the Visual Arts, Socrates Sculpture Park, Location 1, and the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council's process space on Governor's Island. Rudy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay, good. Okay. So let's go ahead and start.
Okay, cool. Hello, everybody. So I wanted to start with this drawing, which is actually pretty recent. I made this last week. It's a portrait of Ahmaud Arbery, the guy that was running in Georgia in his neighborhood and was shot and killed by two men that said they were doing a citizen's arrest or something like that. And it's sort of an example of, or one of this longer project that I've been working on for the last 16 years. Like Gabriel mentioned in the introduction, of making portraits of sort of victims of crimes and also like the perpetrators, And other things have folded into it along the way, but it's sort of central to a lot of everything else I'm going to show you and everything else that I do. So you can go to the next slide. So another thing that goes along with that work, which can be really heavy and like, you know, for me, and especially talking about it, is this sort of a counterpoint, which is this different projects that I've done that sort of try to offer a solution. So the sculpture that you're looking at is called the Black Rock Negative Energy Absorber. So it's meant to be a sculpture that like pulls negative energy from people so that they can sort of like be their best selves and sort of treat people in a more positive way, you know, and it sort of came out of, I made the first one of these a long time ago, actually, before I started doing the drawing project. And it was sort of, as an artist that's always worked sort of politically and looked at problems in the world and thought about solutions and what can I do as an artist, I sort of came up with this idea, like I'm gonna make a sculpture that actually does something. You know, it doesn't just like represent a problem or point to it, it actually does something to fix it. You know, so it was somewhat, I don't want to say it was a joke, but it was sort of like, you know, I know this isn't going to work. It's like me making it up, but it was like, I really felt like the intention would be, you know, I was hoping that the intention would be expressed. So the first ones I did were just sculptures, and along the way, I've sort of incorporated performance into that. So the person that you see standing there is called the healer. He's sort of grown out of the sculptures. And this is called the induction ceremony, where the healer is actually like activating the sculpture at the opening for the sculpture. So you can go to the next image. So this is an image you may recognize or not. This is from the protest, counter-protest in Charlottesville when there was a white supremacist rally going on, and these are all the counter-protesters. And this is that moment when the guy drove his car into the crowd. And, you know, I'd heard about the story and I'd done a portrait of Heather Heyer and the guy that did it. But when I looked, you know, I was looking around on the internet and I saw this image, I was just sort of blown away by like how crazy it looked. Even like I knew it was a terrible thing that happened, but just to see it myself was really shocking. And so I felt like I needed to like represent that. Like that was, because I think that we, like, I listen to the news, and so I hear it, and, you know, you kind of make a picture, but it was, like, way worse than that. And I also liked how this image, you could see all the different groups that are represented here, you know, with their signs and stuff like that. So you can go to the next image. So this is the solo show that I had at Smack Mellon. So another negative energy sculpture. The portraits are there. There were about 300 of them, pretty much all of them that I'd done by that time. And one thing I wanted to point out and also the larger drawings are here. But one thing I wanted to point out is as you can see, there's just all the portraits are all lined up. You know, there's no text next to them. So the idea is that you look at these people as human beings first. You don't know who the perpetrator is. You don't know who the victim is. Like, you have this experience where you just see them as people again, right? And then maybe you go and you look at the information and you find out who you're not supposed to like or whatever, who you'd heard about or something. I'm very interested in that delay, that time delay, and the information and that gap, and just what happens in that, and this idea of empathy. So you can go to the next image. So going along with both of these projects is a third project where I'm making, it's funny, I want to say, like, portraits of these holy mountains. And this was inspired by Jodorowsky's film, The Holy Mountain. And they're portraits, they're very large paintings of these mountains all over the world that are considered sacred by all, different religions and cultures. You can go to the next image. I think we should just push through. This is Machu Picchu. Next image, Eric Garner. This is, again, like one of those images I looked up that I just had to represent because of just how it moved me. It already, and just this idea that he was so ominous, and you see him kind of surrounded by 4 police officers, kind of questions that. All right, next image. I think Little Richard. Go ahead, next image. I know I'm out of time. Jerry Stiller, who passed away just recently. And then this is something I'm working on now, which is a portrait of Alice Coltrane on the steps of her ashram. And this has like about 21 different figures in it, and I'm kind of working on it now. So that's all. I'll stop there. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to elaborate.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you.
And okay, we have a question from April Johnson. The sculpture in the second image, what is it made from?
So these sculptures are hollow. So it's made out of, there's a wood skeleton, and then it's concrete and colored concrete. They're meant to look like sort of rock formations or something, you know, so they sort of fall right into the ground. But yeah, they're hollow actually. They're still very heavy though, probably a ton or so.
Yeah. And who else has a question? Okay. Would you say that this is a question from Carol Saft. Would you say that you tried to create a neutral space for folks to wrestle with good and evil?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you want to go to that image of the show at SMAC Mellon, yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right? Is to sort of, because, you know, these are, I mean, this process of making this work is me just sort of like paying attention to what's going on in the world and trying to make sense of it in some way, and like try to understand like human nature, like the greatest of it and the worst of it, you know, and what do we do with that? And what do we do with these people after, you know, what am I supposed to think about somebody after I hear like this horrible thing that they've done, you know? And so it's not so much that I'm putting them up there to sort of vilify them as much as I'm as confused as anybody else about sort of like just the complexity of life, you know? So the project tries to speak to that complexity, right? And that's why the variety of the stories just keeps like expanding, right? It's not just all criminals and victims, you know, there's also artists and musicians and actors and people that have, like myself, that are trying to make sense of it, trying to contribute to the world, trying to counter this sort of forces that tear us apart constantly, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a question from Arancha Rodriguez, and then Marion Wilson has a question as well. So Arancha's question is the healer on the negative energy mountain wearing a monkey mask?
No, it's hard to see because you're looking up, but the head is actually like a sculpture. It's sort of abstracted. It almost looks like a rock formation. So it's sort of similar in the way it looks to the sculpture itself. The you know, the sculpture that the guy's standing on, the figure standing on.
Okay, so it's kind of meant to look like he kind of is part of the rock or came out of the rock, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same language. It's sort of you know, organic abstraction. Yeah.
And Marion Wilson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I like your work a lot, and I like how you talk about solutions, particularly in talking about really difficult subject matter. And I was just wondering about the negative energy sculptures. Yeah, I mean, I could believe in something like that, and I'm just wondering if you have any anecdotes about them, or like, are they a joke to you, or do you believe in them? I mean, like, I could believe in that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the line of the whole thing, right? I think that it's not a joke to me, you know what I mean? Like, I think it started as like, I don't know if joke is the right word, but like, you know, that's sort of confronting the common criticism of like political art. It's like, you know, you're preaching to the choir, you're just sort of, you know what I mean? Like it can be perceived as very negative and not very useful. So joke is the wrong word, but you know, yeah, this question always comes up, and it's sort of like, I do believe in them, you know, and like I do these performances, which I didn't, you know, the healer on top of the sculpture sort of represents, and I've done them even without the sculptures, where it's really about like, it's a healing ceremony, right? But it's all of my creation, right? So again, like, and I've had people literally tell me that like I go into the performance feeling a certain way, maybe whatever's going on in the world gets expressed. And people tell me like after the performance, which is like me kind of, you know, moving around, sort of trying to express myself without language. And also like I have these musicians and I'm playing, and it's very like jazz noise, like, you know, very out there, right? But people kind of get the message as far as like in a very intuitive sort of emotional way. And that's the language that I'm trying to use, right? And so like I believe in it, and I think those performances, and I think even putting the idea out there and people kind of interacting with the sculpture, that it does function, even if it's only like it gets you to think in a certain direction, you know what I mean? And like pause from your normal kind of way of thinking. So yeah, that's how I would answer that question, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to go somewhere. I could go somewhere else, but I'll avoid the bad joke about like how cult leaders don't get to believe in like their own shit. Because I don't, you know, they're terrible, and I'm not trying to be terrible. I'm trying to be helpful. But it's like I feel like other people get to like believe it more than I do sometimes because I'm like the one making it, I guess is all I'm trying to say.
That's really interesting.
So yeah, I should probably leave it there.
Thank you, Rudy. And I think I'm going to read this quote that Clifford wrote in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a quote by Cornel West: "Justice is what love looks like in public." So I think that's a nice way to maybe end your talk. So thank you, Rudy. And now we have Mary Temple, last but not least.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Okay, so Mary Temple is probably best known for her immersive trompe-l'oeil installations, which are subtle room-sized paintings of light and shadow. However, in the past several years, the artist has built a body of abstract work on canvas and paper. Mary has exhibited her work nationally and internationally. She's completed commissioned projects at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, Sculpture Center in Queens, the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art, the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, Rice Gallery in Houston, Western Bridge in Seattle, Drawing Center in New York, and Bunkamura Museum in Tokyo. Her work is currently included in What is Feminist Art at the Archives of American Art in the Smithsonian through November 2020. Mary has received fellowships and awards, including the MacDowell Colony Fellowship, the St. Gaudens Memorial Fellowship, the Basil Al-Qazi Award for Excellence in Painting, 2 NIFA Fellowships in Painting, and she was NIFA's Lily Auchincloss Fellow in Painting in 2007. Mary, are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Gabriel. We can go to the first slide.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank Gabriel, Kathleen, everybody at SMAC Mellon, and each of you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your being here. I'd like to tell you about some paintings on paper that I've been making specifically during the COVID quarantine. Since March 12th, I've made and posted one each day. I've been posting them on Instagram, and you can see all of them there. But that happened very spontaneously. I've been painting for 30 years and my practice is always evolving. However, I was surprised to find myself doing a daily project again. I have done them in the past, but there's a calming rhythm to it and it makes a kind of sense. Each painting is around 15 by 15 inches. They're gouache on paper with additional collaged elements that are archive prints from previous paintings of mine. These first 2 paintings that I want to show you, though, are examples of what I was doing right before the pandemic. So this one is Finding Shark Teeth, and it's 60 by 55 inches. It's acrylic on canvas. And I'm really, the way that I work is I feel like I go through the world and collect images and bring them back to the studio and transform those images and experiences, translate them into work. And so Finding Shark Teeth is about walking on the beach and finding these treasures. And I walk about 7 miles a day. So I really feel like those walks are, I try not to bring physical things back to the studio, but I do feel like it's a type of research for the paintings. And you could go to the next one. It's called In Broken Music. It's actually the painting that's behind me. So you can see that the color is quite a lot more vibrant than is really showing in the image. But this one is named after a passage in a Shakespeare play, King Henry V, which is where he is asking the French princess Catherine to marry him. She doesn't speak much English and she has a heavy accent, so he asks her to answer him in her broken music rather than broken English. You can go to the next slide. In this detail of the painting, I'm hoping you can see that very early in the painting layers, I've buried broken letter forms. I've cut up typography. You might see some curves, serifs, loops, or dots of text, a heap of language. The bright pink dots are the periods or the dots of the I's and the J's. You can go to the next slide. So this begins the paper pieces that I've been doing every day. And this one's called Rock and Sing. I completed it on Mother's Day a couple Sundays ago. You might be able to make out a rocking form with a couple of head shapes, and that diagonal matrix is meant to keep the shapes moving and rhythmic. The next one, bop, bop, bop. You can go to the next slide. Oh, there we go. I think it froze a little bit. Yeah, there we are. So this one's called Bop, 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 and it's a sound effect that's laid over the theme song for a 1958 Steve McQueen thriller, The Blob. It's a sci-fi horror film about an amoeba that's killing people and taking over the world. So it's like a bad dream or a movie that we are all living. The next one is Juggle. And it's another stress painting. It's a circus scene with an evil yellow clown up on the right, presiding over chaos. And the obvious subtitle for this piece is Elect a Clown, Expect a Circus. The next one.
Yeah.
The next one is Gingham Mask. And we've been seeing a lot of masks. This one, it looks like it's on someone's furry pet, which I have seen recently at the park. And you go to the next one, which is Vault, and it has to do with a vault interior architecture, with all of us sheltering it in place and staring at our walls and ceilings. And then you can go to the next one, which is called Purple Warbler. And I just want to point out on this, you can see when I'm talking about using images from other pieces of paintings, that's what the black, more graphic, black and white and gray area is in this painting. We can talk about that more in questions and answers if you want. And then there's one more that's kind of a winter scene, and it's called Oslo 1952. Wrapping up, I just want to say that I'm dedicated to a very specific relation to life through painting about states of existence and trying to respond to the world by finding forms and modes to present emotion and ideas. And I think it's important for us to see each other passionately looking and seeing and searching. So I'm grateful to have been included in this group of accomplished, passionate artists.
Thank you so much, Mary. We're gonna start the questions. There are a couple that are written in the chat. So April Zane Johnson writes, I love the energy in the marks. This really reflects the 7-mile walks you mentioned.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah, there's. Yeah, I think like that's one of the things that I'm really interested in, having these pieces. Like I want the speed to change a lot. So there are times when it really is about spontaneity and moving quickly and responding even to music. I mean, like sometimes I know I want a certain mark and I will put on, you know, a very rhythmic drum and paint to that because I want a very, very specific staccato mark. So I'm glad that comes through.
Great. Carol Saft asks, as you walk for your research, do you keep a pace that matches the scale of the fragments or the size of the elements in your paintings? Like a glancing snapshot, there is a flow that is organic, there is a rhythm to the work. I guess you kind of talk
I
about?
think I did kind of answer it, but I would just say that, by the way, I'm a really fast walker.
Okay. I'm sure. I can imagine. Robin Glassman asks, what are the materials?
They're mainly gouache. That's the more watercolor that you're seeing. There's some charcoal that I'm adding to acrylic, so that when you see these impressions, there is a surface to some of the work, and then the parts that seem photographic are photographic, but they're photos that are printed on archival paper of my previous paintings and cut and put into these. And that kind of connects the painting one to another, so that, because I really do feel like the paintings continue, and this is a way of tying them all together. So I think you can see it as we go back through that there's a collage element, and that element is an entirely different painting.
I see, okay. And Hannah Owens has a question. Are you there, Hannah?
Yes, I am. Hi. Thank you.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for sharing these with us. Given your work is more abstract, and that you also said you like to reflect emotion in them, let me know if this needs more clarification. Are you reflecting emotion more in what you collect, as you said, in your walks and in the things that you're actually like, physically and metaphorically representing the work, or does the impetus for the viscera ever come from you first?
Yeah, great question. And I want to say that, Susan Rothenberg just died, and I was reading something about what she wrote about how she developed her pictures, and they were always both the image and the content or the subject happened at the same time. And I was so happy to read that, because that's exactly how I work. I don't know what they're going to be about. That is part of what I love. And in terms of what is going to be put into them, I feel like the research of the walk is a gathering, just the way listening to the radio is and hearing the news. Like, it's all, I feel like the role of the artist is to absorb, to notice, and as I said, then to translate and put it back out there. So let's see, I may have gotten myself a little lost in that answer, but so when I'm starting the painting, I don't know where it's going to go. But I do believe, and I didn't always, that abstraction could communicate something fairly clearly. And I think that was one of the reasons I came back to abstraction after about 15 years away, is to kind of test that theory.
Thank you. Elizabeth Condon has a question about the role of time in the work. And I think that's just the question.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of different ways we could talk about it. I mean, but I think, one of them would be the addition of the other paintings, because that it does a couple things. So if you think of gestural painting, you often are going to think about maybe an emotive and a quick movement, just in terms of time. But as soon as you stop that and paste on an image from a different painting, you're talking about a whole different temporality now. You're talking about a painting that might have happened 2 years ago. So there's that, but there's also the speed change in the painting and how it slows the viewing, and that temporality is affected by it. So there are a couple ways we could look at that.
Great, thank you
for that question, Elizabeth.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, and there are a couple of other questions in the chat, but we're going to have to leave it there. I am going to come out of screen share. I want to thank you so much, Jean, Clarity, Karina, Rudy, and Mary. Thank you to the audience for your great questions and comments. I thought it was a really fascinating discussion on all fronts, so thank you all. And before we go, let me just remind you about part 2. We're going to share the link to the submittable application again in the chat. I think, yeah, Becky, my colleague Becky just shared it in the chat. And it's also on the website, on the 5Max page on our website. So if you're an artist and would like a chance to participate in part 2, which are the closed group meetings with one of these 5 artists, you can submit your work on Submittable using the link. You have until this Sunday, May 24th to submit. The deadline is 11:59 p.m. But the spots are limited. We only have 5 spots for each group. And we're gonna try, more or less to fill them up by first come, first serve. And basically, if you are selected, we'll give you more details, but basically what you'll be doing is presenting your work to the group following a similar format as today. So there's going to be 5 artists sharing their work, 5-minute max presentations with 5 minutes of discussion after each. And the closed group meetings will meet next week, Thursday, May 28th at 6. So that's all. Thank you so much. And I want to thank my colleagues, the staff of Mellon, Kathleen, Audrey, Becky, Javier, as well as all the artists again, and all of you for sticking it out with us. So take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the presentations. They were all really great. So, absolutely. And I hope to see you, many of you next week. I hope that you will apply, and it's not really applying, it's more like signing up and sending us your images. And then this can continue. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Okay, gonna end the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Audrey.
Okay.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.